here in Washington DC. I'm walking along the 7th Street and you can see how everything looks so beautiful. In fact, maybe I should say it looks differently beautiful, because today is a very special day. That's the statue of Winfield Scott Hancock bathing in the sun, actually in the eclipsed sun, because today is solar eclipse. Hancock was a military leader in the American Civil War, and he also fought in the American-Mexican War, in which America invaded Mexico and ended up taking large parts of that country. Wow, today's actually a weekday, but you can see it almost feels like a weekend, and people are out here just picnicking on the grass and looking up through their sunglasses, like solar eclipse glasses, which I also have. I'll try to see if they work in front of my camera, but that's basically the whole purpose of this walk. We are out here to experience the solar eclipse on this beautiful afternoon. I've also kind of taken some time off today in the afternoon, and that's why I'm out and about. In fact, I might just have to take a call while I'm watching the eclipse. We'll see how it goes. Of course, so far you can see there's not really much of an impact of the solar eclipse. In fact, we are just looking at the sun as usual, so nothing's changing there. But of course, it looks like a incredibly beautiful and sunny day here in Washington DC. You can see the pink hues as well. DC, of course, is famous for its cherry blossoms as well. We'll see if we get a sneak peek into that, but of course it's the eclipse that's the main focus.
Small donation, please.
There is some time before we get the peak, and the peak here in Washington DC is a little less than 90% coverage of the sun, so hopefully that'll be very interesting. Yeah, nothing much happening there. I think I'm struggling to also focus, because of course the glasses are in front of my camera lens right now. Yeah, nothing much happening there. We don't really see much of the moon covering the sun as of now. I think this is also the first moment I'm showing you the Washington Monument, but this will be as close as we'll get to it, because as I mentioned, we'll be walking to what's called the Tidal Basin, and that's where we'll check out the eclipse this afternoon. But I just love how everything is looking so beautiful already. I don't know if this is the eclipse or this is just me thinking, but it's just beautiful wherever you look. The Washington Monument was actually built 99 years before India got its independence, and India became independent in 1947. So, when was this built? 1848, so that was when this monument was built in DC. Washington Monument is also the tallest structure in Washington DC, and it's supposed to be that way, so you cannot really build anything that's taller than the Washington Monument. Of course, we know where this inspiration comes from, because in Paris, the Eiffel Tower is sort of playing a similar role. the solar eclipse is making everything so beautiful. Though I do want to correct one reference about inspiration, like where the inspiration for Washington Monument being the tallest thing in the city comes from. Definitely doesn't come from the Eiffel Tower, because the Eiffel Tower was built later. I think it's probably something to do with the way I'm focusing, because I'm sure like we have, I don't know, 50, 60%, 70% already. Oh wow. Yeah. I think you see it now. You see the moon covering about 50% of the sun. So we are very close to the water, the tidal basin of Washington DC, and hopefully by the water we'll get nicer views of everything, and of course nicer views of the solar eclipse. It's so beautiful. I don't know how beautiful the eclipse would be, but just because I stepped out and I'm looking at everything around me on a weekday and it looks so beautiful, I think it's worth it already. Even if we don't see a good solar eclipse, I think I'm loving this, especially because I'm doing it on a weekday. Wow. I wonder if this solar eclipse walk would finally make me feel somewhat at home here in Washington DC, because I think you cannot really deny it. This is just so beautiful. All these flowers and the bright and clear sun, the blue skies, the wind, the water, of course even the Washington Monument. This is just stunning. I'm so glad I took this break from work just to smell these flowers and have you smell these beautiful flowers. Let's see if I can try to really focus in on this. Just doesn't seem to be working. I wish I had a filter for my camera, which I don't. Yeah, I don't think I can focus this time. That's the Jefferson Memorial, by the way. It's another memorial that was built in the memory of an American president, Thomas Jefferson. The Washington Monument was also built in the memory of a president, because of course this is the capital city, and that's why you've got a lot of these monuments. And I think the cherry blossoms have really faded, so you don't really see much of that pink or of that white anymore. Cherry blossom trees, which of course came from Japan, and I think quite a gift it has been. They're so beautiful, especially around this tidal basin. Of course we cannot see that beauty right now. So the tidal basin, as the name suggests, is actually a man-made structure, and it was built to, in a way, manage the water and the coastline here in Washington DC a little better. When I say coastline, I don't really mean coastline, because we are talking about a river here, which is the Potomac River, and that river experiences high tides and low tides throughout the day, and that's how water comes in and fills this basin, which is called the tidal basin, and it also moves out during low tide. And if you go to Google right now, Google Maps, and you look at the map of this area, you'll be able to properly understand this. So there's the Potomac River on one side and the man-made channel called the Washington Channel on the other side of the tidal basin. And usually the water enters into the tidal basin from one of those gates, the inlet gate, and then it outlets or goes out through the Washington Channel, and that's how the movement of the water is controlled. And that movement also helps clean out and clear out the Washington Channel, which can then be used for shipping and for boats and all that fun stuff. Wow, do you notice that? It's definitely more than 50%. Maybe this is like 68.5%, 70%. Wow. And you barely notice it without these glasses, right? Looking outside, everything looks normal. This is surprising. Honestly, I was expecting a lot of change in the environment around me because this will be almost a 90% solar eclipse, but you barely notice anything. I think the only thing I probably feel is that the sun is not that strong, it's not that warm. Other than that, nothing really is happening, and maybe the reason for that is that Washington is not experiencing what's called totality. Everyone's trying to capture the sun. So totality refers to an area where you get 100% coverage during the solar eclipse, and those are the areas where it actually becomes dark during the eclipse. Of course, here we barely feel it. It's odd how much of a difference that 10% can make, because close to 90% we'll be getting even here in Washington DC, but I think that 10% makes all the difference. But still, as I was mentioning, I think this experience is kind of helping me feel a little bit more at home here in DC. These are the pink flowers of the cherry blossoms. Of course, this is not peak bloom. That's why you don't see a very nice pink or white. Wow, that view though is wonderful with the memorial in the background. Oh my God! I think even though I've not really been able to focus, you still see it. I think this is the peak. This is as much of solar eclipse as we'll get. And thank God for these glasses that I'm able to capture this. Of course, you realize that I've put the glasses in front of my camera, right? That's how I'm capturing this 90% solar eclipse here in Washington DC. Wow. And I think that was the peak, so it only goes down from here, and you'll see more of the sun. It'll get brighter and maybe not as nice as things have been so far, because I think once the sun is fully out, it'll be so much more warmer. And I think it's also time for me to start my walk back to the apartment and back to work. Wow, I think I see 3 choppers or 3 helicopters, and you know what that means if you're in Washington DC? I think that means in one of them is the president. Wow, is the president going out to check out the solar eclipse? I don't know, maybe. They've missed the peak though. And coming back as well, that was rather quick. Though I think this is interesting. I noticed that there's 1 chopper there, and then there's the second one, but there's no third one. So I think that makes it all the more clear that they've dropped off the president somewhere, and now they're going back to the White House. Also giving us a bit of a maneuver over the beautiful tidal basin. Damn, I did not capture the eclipse that well. I mean, I did, but I think the things that have happened beyond the eclipse, they've been all the more interesting and all the more beautiful. Look at that. They showed us a bit of a circus and now they're heading back. I don't know what they did it for. Maybe they wanted to like not be back too early. So they did their merry-go-round.